Today, we become legends.
So the Season 9 news started dropping from HRX and tons of new changes are coming to Smite in the new season. This video will be covering all the Relic upgrades and changes, but I'll have other videos coming on the rest of the changes like Tier 4 items, the Conquest map changes, the new Slash game mode, balance changes and more. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to catch those as they come out and all the Season 9 content coming this year. But without further ado, let's get into all the Relic changes we have in Season 9. So the cornerstone feature for Season 9 is a huge overhaul to the Relic system. Many relics are being changed or balanced, some are removed, but most importantly they're all getting two unique Tier 3 upgraded versions that provide some powerful effects. So this is on top of the base relic that we already had. Relics are a huge part of skill in Smite, as timing their usage and which ones you pick up can have big effects on every match, absolutely true. We are adding even more depth to this system to provide players with a unique set of abilities that complement their gods and teamwork. So this is how it's going to work. Base relics will still be awarded based on level, so you get your first relic at level 1, your second at level 12 as it always has been. They're still free as usual. The tier 2 upgrade, instead of being 500 gold, is now 300 gold, so it's going to be a little bit cheaper to get those tier 2 upgrades for the relics that we currently have now. And then that big boy tier 3 upgrade where it gives it a completely different effect, you know, 2 branching paths, that's going to be 800 gold. And also they've removed the level restrictions entirely, so this is how old active items used to work before. They changed it to relics, you could upgrade them whenever you wanted. You can do that now, so if you really wanted to, you could spend 1100 gold at level 1 to get a full relic, so obviously that's not going to be the play, I don't think. Although I might eat my words there depending on how OP some of these relics are, you know, there might be some absurd meta where you rush one of these upgraded at level 1. You never really know with Smite, so here we go, Aegis Amulet, 10-second cooldown off of it, that's fine, honestly. I'm fine with like a 10-second cooldown decrease for both of these. And then we get into the two upgrades for Aegis. So firstly we have the Aegis of Acceleration. So for this one, basically after your Aegis ends, you gain movement speed for each tick of damage you took in that Aegis, like when you were immuning it, up to 3 times. And this lasts for 4 seconds, you know, stacking up to 3 times will be 21% movement speed for 4 seconds. That's a pretty substantial buff, so like if you do Aegis a big ability, you can potentially get out as well afterwards. That's the idea of this one. And the Aegis of Judgment is a little bit more of an aggressive one. This one you basically store the damage that you took and do 100 plus 50% of that damage to enemies in like an AoE after the Aegis ends. However, the damage dealt by this effect is capped at 50% of your maximum health, so you can't just eat like 3 mage ultimates at once to do like absolutely absurd damage. There is a cap on it. So these ones are pretty interesting. You know, Aegis of Judgment, it almost gives you a way of kind of making it more aggressive, so you're gonna like jump in and try and Aegis a big ability and use that for damage on people, whereas Aegis of Acceleration is probably what a lot of the mages and hunters will go as just like their default Aegis. So we have some slight buffs and things like that and changes to the stats of the original 2 Frenzy items. Not too much change there aside from Penetration is gone from the tier 2, which was obviously the original upgrade that we had. But going into the upgrades for Belt of Frenzy, we have Belt of the Berserker, and this one's going to be a really powerful decaying buff. So it's 30% increased damage and 50% attack speed increase to all gods, and this lasts 6 seconds, but it decays every 0.5 seconds. So effectively you're going to be doing less and less damage and less attack speed over the course of the time. So like at the start it's going to be insanely powerful. Don't be fooled by these numbers. On average, I'm sure you can do some math to figure this out, but it's not going to be 30% and 50% all the time. It's going to be much less than that for the most part. And the Belt of Insatiable Hunger is a similar thing. You still get increased damage dealt to all targets and some attack speed, but this buff isn't a decaying buff. You just get 15% and 25% for 10 seconds, and if you kill or assist an enemy god while the buff is active, it refreshes, so you could effectively have this for an entire team fight if you're absolutely steamrolling. So these seem really interesting. They're really leaning into the idea of this being kind of like the thing you buy to buff your auto attack characters, you know, with that huge attack speed buff on most of these. And overall these seem really strong, but obviously all the relics are getting stronger, so it has to be enough stronger than all the other relic upgrades, not than what we have now, because these are just going to be strictly more powerful than the relics we have now. Moving on to Blink, we have no changes on the base Blink. The damage mitigation buff from the original Blink upgrade has been removed. So going into the branching tier 3 upgrades here, we have Corrupted Blink Rune. This one gives movement speed and attack speed slow by 15% when you blink in onto people, so this is like the aggressive one, you know, maybe you buy this on solo laners, potentially junglers, blink in, like slow the enemy movement speed and stuff, you can kind of get on them that way. And then we have the Scorching Blink Rune, which as I understand it is basically it turns Blink Rune into an Agni Dash, so when you blink you leave behind like a line of fire that deals tick damage to people that walk through it. And so this one is going to be like for maximum damage, you know, maybe if you're one of the chads that goes blink on mages, which if you are, I highly respect it. I do it myself. If you are one of those players, you can use this for like bonus damage, you know, blink behind someone or something, get them to tick on the line of fire. There'll probably be a lot of cool outplays with Scorching Blink Rune, I feel like. I do like these upgrades. And so we have Bracer, so minor base stat changes. This no longer functions as a sentry ward for the tier 2 upgrade. And so Bracer of Brilliance, the first upgrade, it basically like increases the stats, so you're going to get 20% increased power and 20% movement speed for 8 seconds, which is quite a substantial amount of stats. And then this one acts as a sentry ward, which was what the tier 2 originally did, but they've moved that so you have to go to Bracer of Brilliance for that to work. And then we have Bracer of Illumination, which I guess is kind of like, it's a lesser version, effectively, but you get to reveal enemies that walk through, like, the Bracer area. So this is going to be really good for anti-stealth gameplay. It's a little bit niche, but that's kind of what they were going for with some of these Relic upgrades. They're also doing it with Phantom, you'll see later on, where they're putting the Phantom effect onto an upgrade of Shell and removing Phantom entirely. So this is kind of a thing they want to do, where they want to add really niche effects onto Relic upgrades. So you're not forced into a really niche Relic, you can still go the default upgrade of your item, which will be Bracer of Brilliance in this case. But then they can go for some more wildcard effects that are useful in less situations like Phantom and Invisibility Reveal, stuff like that. We have Meditation Cloak, changed to Cloak of Meditation. And then we have Cloak of the Aesthetic, which is basically a buffed up version of the regular one. This is generally what they're doing with these relics, by the way. There's one that's kind of like a beefier version of the base relic, so what you can expect from the base relic, you just get that but better. And then there's one that's a complete wildcard where it has like some unique effect on it. Basically, you think of it how they've done the starter items, you know, you have like Warrior's Axe and then Sundering Axe, which is just a better version of it, and you have Hero's Axe, which is a unique kind of a passive effect on it. They're doing the relics in the same way. And so the wildcard for Meditation is Cloak of the Avatar, which really thematically, potentially a little nod to the battle pass we have in the game, if you feel me. You gain a protective barrier of wind that explodes if an enemy comes within 15 units and knocks them back. So this is actually potentially pretty useful, because if you're going this on a support, like, you know, most meditation users are, I know some people use it in solo and things like that, but for the most part, it's a support relic, and that's going to be really useful for just like pushing people away from your carries and things like that. It's effectively another way to peel within a relic, which is really nice. Curse Rank and Greater Rank changes, basically these are just like changes to the sort of rebalancing of the initial relics that we had, the first and second tier upgrades, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. You can read these changes as I go through, but I'm mainly interested in the upgrades here, as I'm sure most of you are. And so the first Ank upgrade, it basically gives an additional effect where all healing reduced by this is distributed to your allies, so it's kind of like a Cerberus passive, but distributes to all allies, which I think is pretty cool. You know, you're effectively anti-healing and then also stealing that healing back, so the enemy might have to build anti-heal, and then it kind of creates an interesting dynamic there. Definitely going to be more powerful than it was before. And then there's Drowned Ank, which is effectively sort of, it's got the mechanic from Aquashes 3, where if they are healed during the duration of the anti-heal, they get an additional effect. And this additional effect is that they create a curse pool of miasma beneath them that lasts for 6 seconds, and it deals current health damage like over time and basically follows them around. So like if enemies are really close to them, I can't imagine the AoE will be huge, but if enemies are really close to someone that has the miasma, they'll also take this damage. So it's effectively a way to like really go all in. You know, if you're anti-healing that hell or whatever and she accidentally heals her whole team, you can get big bonus damage and really kind of collapse on her and win that fight. And also this one will remove 75% of the enemy's currently applied shield as well. I forgot to mention that. Base changes to Heavenly Wings and Greater Heavenly Wings. We have Entangling Wings here. This one's pretty interesting, so it basically roots enemies around you for 1 second. So this is quite good, like on a more defensive user of Sprint. So maybe a support, perhaps a Squishy could buy it, though I'm still a little bit iffy on not buying Beads Aegis or Beads Blink on Squishies, to be honest. But yeah, it's interesting that you can effectively root people. I mean, you could use this to engage if like your support goes in and then, you know, dashes in or blinks in or something and entangles everyone as like a root. So that could potentially give supports like a more powerful engage, thinking about it, but it's also really useful defensively. You know, you can root enemies as you're running away with your team and things like that. So I know I don't talk much about these ancillary balance changes to the base relics because it's more so just like a giant rebalancing, but Horrific Emblem has got a lot stronger. Increased attack speed debuff to 25%, which is pretty significant on a rank 1 relic you can get for free at the start of the game. And they added the 15% damage dealt buff that was originally on the upgrade, I think, to this. So now it's still on the upgrade, of course, but you get it at the rank 1. Obviously, a 20-second increased cooldown is definitely warranted for these buffs, but this one could be pretty strong. Keep your eye on Horrific Emblem. The first upgrade is Emblem of Increasing Peril, so this one basically adds an additional debuff on them, where if they deal 10% of an allied god's maximum health during the time they're debuffed, they get like an increased debuff effect, so 10% increase for each, and this stacks up to 3 times. So if you potentially time this really well and, you know, Hunter lands a crit basic attack on your Squishy or whatever and does 30% of their maximum health, you're going to get instantly 3 stacks there, and these debuffs are going to go up by 30%, so what are you looking at there? 55% attack speed debuff and 45% decreased damage dealt? That could be really strong, and a very tactical usage of this could wipe people out of the fight for however long it lasts, 5 seconds. And the Emblem of Trembling Terror, this is interesting. I've noticed this with a lot of them, you know, they were adding roots and knockbacks and stuff like that. A lot of these relic upgrades have CC on them, which is pretty interesting. You know, they're adding a lot more CC to the game, and they're expecting people to not just buy Beads Aegis. Like, I think that's definitely going to happen, unless there's, like, other ways to counter CC. But having CC on relics is going to be really powerful, and they're doing that to a lot of them by the looks of this. So basically, with the Emblem of Trembling Terror, if they're dealt more than 30% of their max health in this duration, so that's if they get dealt it, don't deal it with like it was with the last one, they get trampled for 0.5 seconds. So trembles, obviously, they aren't going to impact things that much. I'm not sure I see this one being super strong, but again, CC on Relics is really powerful, and you've always got to watch out for these ones that are giving you CC. I'm going to be testing all of these pretty thoroughly. They could definitely be very strong. Random buffs are Magic Shell and Greater Magic Shell. The first upgrade is Fortifying Shell. This adds a new debuff once the shield is broken or expires, so this is guaranteed to go off. You don't have to get your shield broken. If it expires, this will still go off. Allies gain a new buff, gaining 20% damage mitigation and 20% movement speed for 3 seconds. And so a bit like the Aegis, I guess, it's a similar kind of thing. You know, if you pop in the shell and you're getting movement speed afterwards, but you're also going to get damage mitigation with the shell. So maybe if you didn't, you know, absorb a shitload of damage with the Aegis, you could still potentially absorb a lot with this shell, 20% damage mitigation. And yeah, then there's Phantom Shell. I mentioned this earlier in the video. They're putting the Phantom effect onto one of the upgrades of Shell, and this is that one. So it's the standard like Shell stuff, and then you also get the being able to pass through player-made walls and objects. We have beads here, so cooldown increased on the base form and on the upgrade, so they're putting beads on a longer cooldown while adding CC to relics. This is going to be a very interesting time, an interesting meta in the start of Season 9. I think a lot of things are going to need changes, for sure, I'll say that much. We have chaotic beads, which basically when you cleanse a CC or when you get hit while you're immune, so like it works on the activation and when you're just like CC immune for the few seconds afterwards, you deal maximum health damage to the god that CC'd you equal to 7%, which is pretty strong. And then, yeah, we have temporal beads, which is, they're bringing back the cooldown reduction on beads. I'm really happy about this change. This is like way back in active items days when full tier beads, so 900 gold you used to have to pay for it. You got 3 seconds off of your cooldowns when you use them. And it just makes a really interesting gameplay applications, because sometimes, you know, beads, you're almost always using them defensively right now, but you can use them aggressively when they've added this cooldown reduction, because like you might just need that 3 seconds left to get to your cooldown to be able to kill a guy, and you can get there because you use your beads, and then you might get CC'd afterwards and die, so like it's definitely a trade-off, but it's a really cool trade-off in my opinion. I'm very glad they added this back. Some base changes to Shield of Thorns and Greater Shield of Thorns. We then have Thorns of Overgrowth. And this gives you an additional movement speed and attack speed buff based on how many enemies are around you. So if it's kind of like a midi Thor passive, I guess, but like for movement speed and attack speed instead. So if you're really diving the backline hardcore, like this is obviously for solo laners, you're going to be diving the backline, you know, fighting 3 or 4 people or something like that, you could get potentially really big movement speed and attack speed increase to kind of stick on people with your Thorns. And so Thorns of Sapping Strength is a pretty interesting one. If I'm reading this right, when the Relic is just like on cooldown and not actually active, getting basic attack by an enemy god will reduce its cooldown by 0.5 seconds, so this will just be constantly active, like ticking your cooldown down, and they also reduce the cooldown to 80 seconds at base. So effectively, I think what they're going for with this one is that you can have it up more often, and like you don't use it once and then like not have it. So like you could potentially get this twice in a fight. Like if you have Relic Dagger plus, you know, you're getting basic attacked a lot in the fight, you could potentially get this twice. Base changes. Sundering Blast is basically just like an upgraded version of the regular Sunder from what I've seen. So targets hit take 5% increased damage for 5 seconds, which will stack 2 times and has 2 charges, all that kind of stuff. Reduces active shields by 75%. I don't see anything different in this one that is kind of different to the normal way Sunder works, so I'm pretty sure this is just a regular, like, beefed up version, basically. But the definitely more interesting version, in my opinion, is Sundering Siphon. So basically, when you hit them with this, you link to them and start stealing current health as true damage every second and receive that as healing, which I think is really cool. Enemies can break the link if they move past 60 units, which is 55 units is a ranged basic attack, so they've got to go about a ranged basic attack away from you to be able to break the link. And still, the Relic has 2 charges as normal, so this one seems really interesting, you know, just like sundering people in the backline to get extra healing if maybe you don't have any healing or you want to supplement it as like a solo lane or something like that could be very interesting. We have Heroic Teleport, which kind of gives you like a stat buff on landing basically, so you gain a slow immunity, 20% increased movement speed and 40 protections for 10 seconds upon landing from the teleport, which is pretty good. You know, this obviously makes teleport a lot better outside of the laning phase, which is the main reason why teleport isn't picked up a lot. You know, it's really good for the solo lane laning phase, you know, but it's not so great in team fights, and this could potentially help with that. You know, if you're teleporting back in, you're kind of like a super soldier for a little bit, really. There's quite a lot of stats here. And then we have Persistent Teleport, which is interesting. So they are seeming to have like a mechanic where you can reduce the cooldown of the Relic while it's on cooldown by doing stuff. There was a similar thing up here, where was it, with Thorns? Yeah, Thorns of Sapping Strength had a similar effect. And so Persistent Teleport kills and assists on enemy god, reduce the cooldown by 10 seconds, and this is obviously going to be permanently active, and it was also decreased to 90 seconds base cooldown, so you could potentially be teleporting around a lot, you know. If you get like a wipe in a team fight, this reduces half the cooldown of the Relic effectively. And still, I don't really see a major use for this purely because, again, of that problem where, like, this will be really useful in the laning phase, but is it really going to be that good in a team fight? I mean, if you can get it off twice, sure, it's great. You know, if you TP in and then potentially get a kill or something and the fight lasts a long time, you can TP back again. That could potentially be very powerful, but I don't really see this being better than Heroic Teleport, to be completely honest with you. But that's it for relics. The next thing is glyph items, which I'll be putting out a video for very soon. So if you want to see that, definitely remember to subscribe to the channel. These relics look super interesting. There's only a few that I've seen a little bit of a problem with, which is mainly like adding CC and things like that. But they look really cool. You know, a lot of these additional effects like Phantom are gone now, so you don't feel as bad for buying Phantom because you have Phantom Shell and things like that. There's a lot of cool, unique effects on these. To be honest, starter items looked really strong when they released, and they've eventually come down to a reasonable spot in my opinion. So I think this could be really cool. So yeah, let me know what you think down below, and I'll catch you guys in another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.